The courtroom was buzzing with anticipation. As a lawyer, I've seen my fair share of high-profile cases, but this one was different. The media was all over it, and every day was a battle, not just in court but outside it too. The pressure was immense, and I often found solace in the late-night hours, working on my arguments, away from the prying eyes of the world. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I overheard two interns discussing something. "Have you heard about those smart zombies?" One of them whispered, glancing around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. I chuckled to myself. Urban legends were common, especially in a city as big as ours. Probably some new drug on the streets, I thought, dismissing the conversation. When I reached home, the house was dark. Clara, my wife, usually waited up for me, but lately, she'd been distant. I attributed it to the stress of the case, thinking she was just giving me space. But that night, as I entered our bedroom, I noticed something odd. The bed was untouched, and Clara was nowhere to be found. I called out to her, but there was no response. A sense of unease settled in. I checked the entire house, but she wasn't there. Just as panic began to set in, I heard the front door creak open. Clara walked in, her face pale and her eyes distant. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep the concern out of my voice. She looked at me, her gaze unfocused. "Just out," she replied, her voice flat. I wanted to press further, but something stopped me. Over the next few days, I noticed more changes. Clara's appetite had shifted. She no longer enjoyed her favorite dishes, often leaving her meals untouched. She'd also started going out late at night, returning in the early hours of the morning without any explanation. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, I tried to broach the subject. "Is everything okay, Clara?" I asked gently. She looked up, her eyes cold. "Why wouldn't it be?" she snapped. I was taken aback. This wasn't the Clara I knew. "I'm just worried about you," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's just stress, David. Don't worry about it." But I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. The whispers about smart zombies echoed in my mind. I tried to dismiss them, but the evidence was mounting. Clara was changing, and I had to find out why. As the days turned into weeks, the distance between us grew. The woman I loved was slipping away, replaced by a stranger. The rumors, once a source of amusement, now felt like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over our lives. I decided to dig deeper, to find out if there was any truth to the whispers. Little did I know, I was about to uncover a world I never knew existed, a world where the line between reality and legend was blurred. And as the pieces began to fall into place, I realized that the horror was closer to home than I could have ever imagined. The days following my discovery of Clara's late-night escapades were filled with a mix of dread and confusion. My once loving wife had become a stranger, her behavior increasingly erratic. But nothing prepared me for what I was about to discover. One evening, as Clara was getting ready for bed, I noticed a peculiar mark on her neck. It looked like a small, circular scar, but it was unlike any scar I'd ever seen. It was almost luminescent, glowing faintly in the dim light of our bedroom. "Clara," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "what's that on your neck?" She froze, her hand instinctively reaching up to touch the mark. "It's nothing," she replied quickly, her voice quivering. "Just a bug bite." But I wasn't convinced. The mark looked too deliberate, too perfect to be a mere bug bite. And coupled with her recent behavior, it raised more questions than answers. That night, as we lay in bed, I tried to push my concerns aside. I missed the closeness we once shared, the intimacy that had been the foundation of our relationship. I reached out to touch her, hoping to bridge the growing chasm between us. As our fingers intertwined, I felt the familiar warmth of her skin, but there was an underlying coldness that was new. Pulling her close, I tried to lose myself in her embrace, seeking the comfort that had always been there. But as our lips met, I felt a sharp sting on my tongue, like a jolt of electricity. Startled, I pulled back, only to see Clara's eyes change before me. They turned a deep shade of black, devoid of any emotion. Her grip on me tightened, her fingers digging into my skin. She bites me playfully. Her strength was overpowering, and I could feel the air being squeezed out of my lungs. Panicking, I pushed her away, using all my strength to break free from her grasp. Clara, looking horrified, quickly retreated, her eyes returning to their normal shade. "David," she whispered, her voice filled with fear, "I'm so sorry." But I was too shaken to respond. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The rumors, the whispers about smart zombies, suddenly seemed all too real. I spent the next few days researching the phenomenon, delving deep into the dark corners of the internet. And what I found was both fascinating and horrifying. There were countless accounts of people exhibiting similar behavior, of loved ones changing overnight, of strange marks and increased strength. The evidence was mounting, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. As the days turned into weeks, my relationship with Clara became increasingly strained. The woman I had once loved was now a source of fear and suspicion. I couldn't shake off the feeling that she was hiding something, that she was part of something much bigger and more sinister. But as I delved deeper into the world of smart zombies, I realized that I was not alone. There were others like me, searching for answers, trying to make sense of the unimaginable. And as the pieces began to fall into place, I knew that I was on the brink of a discovery that would change my life forever. The days following my harrowing encounter with Clara were a blur. Sleep eluded me, and every waking moment was consumed by a burning need to uncover the truth. The mark on Clara's neck, her sudden surge of strength, and those haunting black eyes, they all pointed to something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. I began my investigation by revisiting the dark corners of the internet, where I had previously stumbled upon the rumors of smart zombies. This time, however, I dug deeper, following leads and connecting dots. It wasn't long before I came across mentions of an organization, a shadowy group that seemed to be at the center of it all. The more I read, the clearer the picture became. These weren't just mindless zombies, they were part of a well-structured hierarchy, controlled by this organization. They were smart, blending seamlessly into society, living among us, undetected. But the most chilling revelation was their ability to infect others. They didn't just bite at random, they infected with purpose, only when ordered. My research was interrupted by a knock at my office door. Startled, I quickly closed the tabs on my computer. The door creaked open, revealing a tall, slender man, dressed in a black suit. His face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, casting a shadow over his eyes. "Mr. David," he began, his voice cold and emotionless, "you've been asking a lot of questions." I swallowed hard, trying to mask my fear. "Who are you?" He chuckled, a sound devoid of any warmth. "The question isn't who I am, but rather, what I represent." I clenched my fists, trying to muster some semblance of courage. "What do you want?" He leaned in, his face inches from mine. "You're treading on dangerous ground, David. Your curiosity could be your downfall." I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "What have you done to my wife?" He straightened up, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Your wife is special, David. She's one of us now. And if you value her life, and yours, you'll stop digging." With that, he turned on his heel and left, leaving me in a state of shock. The weight of his words bore down on me, and I realized that I was in way over my head. This wasn't just about Clara anymore. It was about something much bigger, something that threatened the very fabric of our society. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, anger, and desperation consumed me. I wanted to save Clara, to free her from the clutches of this organization. But how could I fight something so powerful, so deeply entrenched in our world? As the days turned into weeks, I became increasingly paranoid. Every shadow, every creak of the floorboards, sent shivers down my spine. I knew I was being watched, that they were closing in on me. But I couldn't give up, not without a fight. I decided to confront the organization, to face them head-on. Armed with the knowledge I had gathered, I set out to uncover their secrets, to expose them for what they truly were. But little did I know, the real horror was yet to come. The evening air was thick with tension as I made my way home. The weight of the revelations about the organization and the smart zombies bore heavily on my mind. But nothing could have prepared me for what awaited me. As I approached our house, I noticed the front door slightly ajar. Panic surged through me. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, my senses on high alert. The dimly lit living room was eerily silent, save for a faint, wet sound coming from the kitchen. I cautiously made my way towards the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. As I turned the corner, a horrifying sight met my eyes. Clara was hunched over a lifeless body, her mouth smeared with blood. She was feeding. I gasped in horror, drawing her attention. Her eyes, once filled with warmth and love, now glowed with an unnatural hunger. But as she met my gaze, a flicker of recognition passed through them. "David," she whispered, her voice filled with a mix of horror and desperation. I took a step back, my mind racing. "Clara, what have you done?" She rose slowly, her hands trembling. "I didn't want to, David. I tried to resist, but the hunger. It's too strong." I struggled to process what I was seeing, my emotions a whirlwind of fear, anger, and disbelief. "You're one of them," I whispered, my voice filled with dread. Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face. I was turned against my will. I didn't choose this life. I sank to the floor, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. "Why didn't you tell me?" She knelt beside me, her eyes filled with pain. "I was scared. Scared of what you'd think, scared of what they'd do to you if they found out." I looked into her eyes, searching for the woman I once knew. "Who did this to you?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "The organization. They control us, David. They decide who lives and who dies. They decide who turns and who remains human." I clenched my fists, anger surging through me. "We have to stop them." Clara shook her head, her expression grave. "It's not that simple. They're everywhere, watching, waiting. If we make a move against them, they'll come for us." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "There has to be a way. We can't let them win." Clara looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. "There might be a way, but it's risky. We'd be putting everything on the line." I nodded, determination burning in my eyes. "I'm willing to take that risk if it means saving you." Clara smiled weakly, her hand reaching out to touch mine. "Together, we can face anything." As we sat there, hand in hand, the weight of the situation bore down on us. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, one thing was clear: we were in this together, and we would do whatever it took to survive. The mansion's towering spires loomed ahead, its dark silhouette cutting through the foggy night. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Every step towards that building felt like a step away from my humanity. I couldn't shake off the memory of that night with Clara. The passion, the intensity, and that playful bite. It all made sense now. That wasn't just a mark of love, it was the mark of infection. Inside, the mansion was a maze of corridors. I stumbled upon a dimly lit room, its walls lined with files. My hands trembled as I picked up a document with my name on it. It detailed the infection process, and my heart sank. I was turning, and it had started that night with Clara. Suddenly, lights blazed. I was surrounded. Men in dark suits, their faces cold, emotionless. Their leader, a tall man with piercing eyes, stepped forward. "David," he sneered, "thought you could outsmart us? Where's Clara?" I demanded, my voice echoing through the vast room. On cue, Clara was brought in, her eyes a mix of pain and resignation. She looked at me, her gaze filled with a mix of sorrow and understanding. "David," she whispered, "I didn't want this for you." The leader chuckled, a touching reunion. "But let's get to the point." He gave me a choice: join them willingly or be forced. I was already infected, and the thought of being with Clara, even in this twisted reality, was too strong to resist. Clara approached me, her fingers brushing against my cheek. "David, if we're together, maybe we can find a way out. Maybe we can fight them." I nodded, taking strength from her words. "Together," I whispered back. They gave me a drink, its contents meant to speed up my transformation. As it burned down my throat, I felt a change, a darkness taking over. Clara held my hand, her grip firm. "We'll be together," she whispered. The world around me blurred. When I regained focus, I was different, changed. Clara and I, now bound by a dark fate, stood side by side, our past a fading memory, our future uncertain in the hands of the unseen order. The sun hadn't even risen when my alarm blared, pulling me from a restless sleep. Another day at Redwood Maximum Security Prison awaited. As the warden, my days started early and ended late, filled with the constant challenges of managing some of the country's most dangerous criminals. I took a moment to stare at the ceiling, gathering my thoughts. The prison was my life, and the weight of responsibility was never light. I'd seen things in my years at Redwood that would give most people nightmares. Brutal fights, suicide attempts, and the dark underbelly of human nature were all in a day's work for me. After a quick shower and dressing in my crisp uniform, I made my way to the prison. The massive stone walls of Redwood loomed ahead, a grim reminder of the lives contained within. The guards saluted as I passed, their faces a mix of respect and weariness. "Morning, Warden James," greeted Officer Daniels, a young recruit who'd joined us a few months back. His eyes still held that glint of idealism, something that faded fast in this environment. "Morning, Daniels," I replied, giving him a nod. "Anything unusual to report?" He hesitated for a moment. "There's been some talk among the inmates about the new medical wing. Rumors, mostly. They say there are strange sounds coming from there at night." I frowned. The new medical wing was a recent addition, funded by an anonymous donor. It was meant to provide better healthcare for the inmates, but I'd heard whispers of experimental treatments. "Keep an ear out, Daniels. Let me know if you hear anything concrete." He nodded, looking slightly nervous. "Will do, sir." The rest of the morning went as expected. Inmate disputes, contraband confiscations, and the usual challenges of managing a prison. But as the day wore on, I couldn't shake off the unease. The rumors about the medical wing nagged at me. What were they doing in there? And why was it shrouded in so much secrecy? I decided to pay a visit to the wing later that day. But before I could, the piercing sound of the prison alarm cut through the air, setting my heart racing. Something was very wrong. As I rushed towards the source of the disturbance, I had no idea that the horrors of the day were just beginning. The brutal reality of Redwood was about to take a dark and twisted turn. The blaring alarm was deafening, echoing through the stone corridors of Redwood. My heart raced as I sprinted towards the courtyard, the epicenter of the chaos. The guards were shouting, trying to communicate over the din, but their voices were drowned out by a more chilling sound, the guttural screams and growls of the inmates. As I reached the courtyard, the scene before me was something out of a nightmarish horror film. Inmates, or at least what used to be inmates, were attacking each other with a ferocity I'd never seen. Their eyes were glazed over, milky white, and their mouths dripped with blood. But it wasn't just the attackers that horrified me, it was their victims. Those who were bitten didn't stay down. They'd convulse, their eyes would cloud over, and then they'd join the ranks of the attackers. "Secure the perimeter," I shouted, trying to rally the guards. But it was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with a broom. The infected inmates were everywhere, and for each one we managed to subdue, 2 more took its place. A blood-curdling scream drew my attention. Officer Daniels, the young guard I'd spoken to that morning, was cornered by 3 of the infected. They lunged at him, tearing at his flesh with their teeth. The raw, visceral brutality of the scene was paralyzing. I watched in horror as they ripped him apart, his screams echoing in my ears long after they'd been silenced. Shaking off the shock, I pulled out my baton and waded into the fray. Every ounce of my training was put to the test as I fought off the infected, their strength and speed amplified by whatever had taken hold of them. But as brutal as the fight was, it was the eyes of the infected that haunted me. Eyes I recognized. Eyes that once held laughter, anger, or even malice, but were now just empty. "We need to retreat," shouted one of the guards, his face pale with terror. And for the first time in my career, I agreed. We were outnumbered and outmatched. We began a tactical retreat, trying to herd the uninfected inmates away from the chaos. But the prison's chief had other plans. Without warning, the steel doors leading out of the courtyard slammed shut, sealing us all inside. His voice boomed over the intercom, "Lockdown initiated. No one gets in or out until the situation is contained." I stared at the closed doors in disbelief. We were trapped. Trapped in a prison with those monsters. The weight of the situation bore down on me, and a chilling thought crossed my mind: was this the end? Would Redwood maximum security prison become my tomb? The echoing clang of the prison doors sealing shut reverberated through the corridors, a chilling reminder of our grim reality. We were trapped, locked in with an ever-growing horde of the undead. The prison, once a symbol of order and control, had become a death trap. I tried to rally the remaining guards, shouting orders above the cacophony of growls and screams. "We need to secure the cell blocks. Get the uninfected inmates to safety." But the chaos was overwhelming. The infected were everywhere, their numbers swelling with each bite. As we fought to regain control, I couldn't help but wonder how this had happened. The prison was a fortress, designed to keep threats out, not in. And then it hit me, the new medical wing. I'd heard whispers among the guards about experimental treatments being conducted on inmates, but I dismissed them as mere rumors. Determined to find answers, I made my way to the medical wing, fighting off infected inmates along the way. The scene that greeted me was straight out of a horror movie. The once sterile environment was now a slaughterhouse, with bodies strewn everywhere. Medical equipment lay discarded, and in the center of the room was a large, overturned cage, its contents, or what remained of them, scattered across the floor. I rifled through the scattered papers on a nearby desk, looking for any clues. Among the medical reports and patient files, I found a confidential memo addressed to the prison's chief. It detailed a series of illegal experiments being conducted on inmates, using a new drug designed to enhance human abilities. But the side effects were catastrophic. The drug didn't just enhance physical abilities, it also triggered an insatiable hunger for human flesh. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. The prison's chief had sanctioned these experiments, and now we were all paying the price. The infected inmates weren't just mindless zombies, they were enhanced killing machines, their strength and speed amplified by the drug. I needed to warn the others, but as I turned to leave, a chilling growl stopped me in my tracks. An infected inmate, his eyes bloodshot and his mouth dripping with saliva, lunged at me. I barely had time to react, using a discarded scalpel to fend him off. But he was relentless, his enhanced strength overpowering me. Just as I felt his teeth sink into my arm, a gunshot rang out, and the inmate crumpled to the floor, a bullet hole between his eyes. I looked up to see Officer Martinez, one of the few guards I trusted, holding a smoking gun. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice filled with urgency. I nodded. "First, we need to find the chief. He's the key to all of this." Martinez looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of determination and fear. "Then let's go. We don't have much time." As we made our way through the prison, the true scale of the horror became apparent. The infected were everywhere, their numbers growing by the minute. But amidst the chaos and carnage, one thing was clear: we were in a fight for our lives, and the odds were stacked against us. The dim emergency lights cast eerie shadows on the walls as our group huddled together in the prison's administrative wing. The moans and growls of the infected echoed through the corridors, a constant reminder of the nightmare outside our makeshift barricade. "We can't stay here forever," Officer Martinez whispered, his eyes darting nervously to the barricaded door. "We need a plan." I nodded, my mind racing. "We need to find the chief. He knows more about this than he's letting on." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. Among us were a few guards, a nurse from the medical wing, and 2 inmates who had managed to avoid infection. Trust was in short supply, but our shared goal of survival had forged a tenuous alliance. Using a map of the prison, we plotted a route to the chief's office, avoiding the main corridors where the infected were most concentrated. We armed ourselves with whatever we could find: batons, fire extinguishers, and even shards of broken glass. As we made our way through the prison, the true horror of the situation became clear. Bodies littered the ground, some torn apart, others slowly turning into the very monsters we were trying to escape. Every corner we turned, every door we opened, held the potential for a deadly encounter. After what felt like hours, we finally reached the chief's office. The door was locked, but the sounds of movement inside told us he was there. Martinez and I kicked the door in, revealing the chief, huddled behind his desk, a look of sheer terror on his face. "You!" I shouted, grabbing him by the collar. "What did you do?" He stammered, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't know it would go this far. They promised funding, a chance to put this prison on the map." I shook him, my anger boiling over. "You played with people's lives for money?" He nodded, sobbing. "I thought it was under control. They said the side effects were minimal." Martinez stepped forward, his face a mask of rage. "Minimal? Look around you. This is your doing." The chief looked defeated, his shoulders slumping. "There's a way out," he whispered. "A secret exit, for emergencies." Hope surged through me. "Where?" He pointed to a panel on the wall, revealing a hidden door. "It leads to the sewers. You can get out from there." Martinez and I exchanged a glance. It was a long shot, but it was our only chance. We decided to split up. Half the group would create a diversion, drawing the infected away, while the rest of us made a break for the exit. As we prepared to put our plan into action, the unmistakable sound of the barricade being breached reached our ears. The infected were here. The next few minutes were a blur of chaos and violence. The infected swarmed the office, their hunger insatiable. Martinez and I fought back to back, using every ounce of strength to fend them off. But their numbers were overwhelming. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air. I turned to see one of the inmates being dragged away, his pleas for help cut short as the infected descended on him. The brutality was unimaginable, a stark reminder of the stakes. With the infected momentarily distracted, we made our move. The remaining survivors and I sprinted for the hidden exit, the chief leading the way. The sounds of the infected grew fainter as we descended into the sewers, but the stench of death was ever present. As we navigated the dark, damp tunnels, the weight of our situation bore down on us. We were free, for now, but the world outside was forever changed. The chief's greed had unleashed a nightmare, and there was no going back. The chief's confession sent shockwaves through our group. The realization that this entire nightmare was a result of greed and ambition was a bitter pill to swallow. The atmosphere was thick with tension, anger, and betrayal. Before anyone could react, a deafening crash echoed through the room. The barricade we had set up was being torn apart. The growls and snarls of the infected grew louder, and the room was filled with the chilling sounds of the approaching horde. "We need to move, now," I shouted, grabbing the chief by the collar and pushing him towards the exit. The group scrambled, but the infected were faster. One of the guards was grabbed from behind, his screams echoing as they tore into him. The brutality was relentless, a stark reminder of the fate that awaited us if we didn't escape. As we ran through the prison's winding corridors, the chief led us to a hidden passage. "This leads to the roof," he panted. "There's a helipad. We can signal for help." But as we emerged onto the roof, our hopes were dashed. The helipad was empty, no sign of any rescue. The sounds of the infected grew louder, and it was clear they were closing in. "We're trapped," Martinez whispered, his face pale. The chief, looking defeated, sank to his knees. "I'm so sorry," he sobbed. "I never meant for any of this to happen." But apologies meant nothing now. We were running out of time and options. I scanned the area, looking for any possible escape route. My eyes landed on a maintenance zip line that connected our building to another across the street. It's a long shot, I thought, but it's our only chance. I grabbed the chief, pulling him to his feet. "You're going first," I said, strapping him to the zip line. He didn't resist, his guilt evident. As he zipped across, the infected reached the roof. The scene was chaotic, a mix of screams, growls, and the metallic sound of the zip line. One by one, our group made their way across, but the infected were relentless. Martinez, always the hero, stayed behind, fighting them off to buy us time. "Go, James!" he shouted, his voice filled with determination. "Save the others." I hesitated, torn between helping my friend and ensuring the safety of the group. But as I watched Martinez get overwhelmed, I knew there was no choice. With a heavy heart, I zipped across, leaving the prison and the nightmare behind. As I landed on the other building, I looked back. The prison was swarming with the infected, a symbol of humanity's hubris and the price we pay for playing God. The group was silent, each lost in their thoughts. The chief sat apart, his guilt weighing him down. The weight of our decisions, our actions, bore down on us. The distant growls of the infected were a constant reminder of the world we now lived in. A world where the line between man and monster was blurred. A world where survival was the only goal. How does it feel to be a zombie? Let me answer that question for you because I know that's what you're thinking, right? To be more specific, what's the best thing about being a zombie? One thing is for sure, it's not the loss of skill. It's going to take me a long time to type this story because I can only use 2 fingers. By chance, though, I seem to have a lot of time these days, which is good news for you, dear reader. With the end of the world and all, my routine has become a lot more flexible, and I no longer keep an eye on the clock or worry about how it affects the progress of my day. That person who said, "I have all the time in the world," had no idea what they were talking about. Before I go on, I think it's only fair to let you know that one of the main themes of my story will probably be leaving a point unfinished or letting a train of thought never arrive at the station. For some reason, this wasn't really a problem when I was, let's say, living. I can only guess that this is partly because my brain is starting to rot in my head. There's only so much a guy can do these days to keep his cool. Since there is no power, the pair cannot be cooled. If you don't have an air-conditioned apartment, a cool creek will do. But there is a thin line between everything. Keep an eye on things even in a cool brook. As soon as you see a hair or a piece of meat floating down the stream, you need to get out of there. What did we talk about? Oh, the best part. Let's see, there's more to think about than you might think. Is it that people in the zombie group tend to get along and share resources? Maybe it's being able to find the real world again after being stuck in a fake one for so long. You probably don't know how nice it is to turn off your brain and be free of the things that hold you back, besides the need for thinking, of course. Is it the chance to finally see this great country and the freedom to make your own schedule? You can get a lot of exercise, and if you can find the right crowd, a long road trip can be a lot of fun. Also, the women. Oh man. I probably don't need to say this because you already know it. The women in the crowd are very many and very dirty, just like you would expect. Even though the dirty means there is a lot of mud, blood, feces, and other gross stuff in a crowd, these girls can also be weird. The best thing ever is zombie girls. Think of some really hot goth girls who are determined to eat some meat. Now picture them in a very bad state of decay, squirming and fighting to eat people who are still alive. It's not perfect, but it's not as hard to make work as you might think. Being a zombie is fun, but the non-stop party vibe isn't the best thing about it. Because I won't have to buy any more useless stuff as long as I'm dead. A shower curtain, an outdoor hose, a pasta strainer, and a Snuggie are just a few of the things I bought at Walmart and Target that I will never have to go back for. If I ever need to mail my rent or utility bills to a company that doesn't accept internet payments, I won't have to go to the post office to get stamps. If I ever need to go into a post office again, it would only be because a young Hispanic mother and her 8-year-old daughter had locked themselves inside and were making their last stand with their golden retriever, whom they named Lala, who barked non-stop while they sobbed in fear. Of course, this is just a guess. That's the best part. My friend, you haven't really felt free until you're no longer tied to the free market grind. What do you think I never think? Did I get my money? Where is my credit card? Do I need gas for my Yugo? Should I get 6 Zima? Should I buy Kool Moe Dee's new record or Aerosmith's? Which VHS tape should I rent if I go to Blockbuster? What kind of liquid hairspray do I need? I guess I should say that I passed away in 1987. Do I need this or that? Do I have enough of product A or B to last the night? Speaking honestly, the only thing I really think about is, well, tasty brains. But if we're being honest, I have to say that's also just a treat. You really don't want to know where the food I do eat ends up since I'm not actually hungry. Let's just say that having smooth running bowels isn't really the same thing as having my problem. Brains might not need the word indulgence. While I don't really need them, the desire to use them can be so strong that the word addiction would fit better. At first, the urge made me feel really bad about myself. I thought it was my own fault, so I kept it very close to my chest. I called them my private delicacies because I didn't want to reveal what my disgusting tastes were really like. Things turned out to be worse than I thought with the condition. In fact, they are so widespread that there is some competition for my treats. To be honest, some of these jerks are starting to really annoy me. You work hard all day, following and tracking a target, but as soon as you get to the good stuff, there are a bunch of jerks trying to get in on the action. I'll beat up a fool who comes after my treats. I am going to cut off their arm and beat them until they are mush. I'm going to cut off my own arm and squish them. I tend to work too much. Sorry, that's not true. It's more of a hobby that I'm very interested in and find myself focusing on with laser-like intensity. Think about how much time you spend looking at porn and you should be able to relate. I know I have a problem, but the zombie community really needs some kind of outreach or self-help program. Since there's no hi, my name is Frank, and I'm hooked on eating gray matter, it's only fair to let you know what will happen. You should stay away from my treats. If someone is nice, patient, and respectful, then I'll share with them. Don't mess with my mind, and I'll do my best to control my addiction. It's not like I don't have a heart. Though it's hard to say at this point. Anyway, it's really pretty silly. I really can't taste anything, not at all. I really don't understand where the urge comes from. I mostly can't feel anything and I can't taste anything. I also see this as an advantage. It could have been a strong handshake or you just cut off my hand. If I'm thinking, I wouldn't know the difference. You need to pay attention, I keep telling the guys in the crowd. This is very important, you need to pay attention. Do my cries go unheard? Because most of the ears were not connected anymore, you could say that. Let me ask you something, how do you feel right now? I know this might bring you down. I don't get pain in my head, back, joints, hangovers, or any of the other things that most people get all the time. Small size doesn't make me sleepy or sneezy in any other way. Since I work out and get lots of fresh air, I don't worry about spraining my big toe or the one next to it. It's not important that I think I've lost my big toe. Feel free to tell yourself that this sounds too good to be true at this time. It sounds like the only way to live is as a zombie or a transhuman, as some left-wing zombies like to call them. Is there any reason I would ever want to keep living as a walker? You are called walkers by us. I mean, look at how well you guys can. Just walk around and do things. Most of us not so good at that. That being said, the word shufflers is very insulting, and if you use it, you might not be seen in a good light. That's different if you hear one of us say it. That word is okay to use. In our community, it's seen as a way to bring people together, and we're taking away the hateful power that you walkers gave it. You should only call us zombies or American undead. Anyway, it looks like you're ready to stop being a walker and join the new wave of people. You're ready to join Team Zombie and start moving up the success ladder. These feelings of excitement are normal. We just want you to know that we're excited about the idea of you joining the company and making a personal difference as well as adding to its success. You make us want to turn into zombies, and we think that you are the only thing that could make us go over the edge. I understand, I also feel it. You should know about the bad things about this exciting project before you start it. I don't want you to leave this today thinking I'm a snake oil seller who only showed you the happy side of a donkey and not its behind. The sun and the moon, yin and yang, the mountain and its image in the lake, and the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. She has a penis. Before you make such an important choice, you need to see the whole bill of sale. You should know that it's not all team building activities and classes on how to move in sync. There are a few, well, quirks that you might not like. First, there is the question of how long the change will last. It really is that, forever. The process itself is very quick, and based on how well you can handle a lot of bites in a short amount of time, it can happen almost instantly. There are times when the process may take a little longer, though, based on how well you can avoid getting bit and hack and shoot. But these are very rare situations that agents face in the field, so it's not worth spending a lot of time on them. So yeah, it's permanent. Also, there have been small problems here and there where team members have lost body parts because of sudden deterioration. So, duct tape and leather jumpsuits have helped us do some really cool things. Also, do these terrible business jokes help you in any way? The maggots are another thing I should think about. Some people have told me that they're an annoyance, even though you can't really feel them. It's hard to keep them out, and once you get them. You know how after going to the beach you find sand everywhere for weeks? That's kind of like it. When you think about the animals, you'll pick them up and not be able to stop. I knew a girl named Kathy who was very hard on herself. That poor white girl picked and picked until she had only one arm and half of her body left. She still couldn't stop. Kathy picked so hard that her arm and head fell off. Please don't get too upset as you picture this sweet mother of three lying in a pile of meat and limbs that are loose from each other. After getting rid of all the maggots, she felt like she had accomplished a great feat. She was also anorexic, and losing weight made her feel a lot better about her body. Two of their friends set her up with Winchester, a man whose head had also been cut off. Some people had questions about them because they are not of the same race, but they are still together and living with his mother and her boyfriend. We think he is touching her, but no one can prove it. Since he's the only one in the house with hands, you'd think it wouldn't be too hard to do. Besides being a player, Jason is a smart guy. He always has a reason for something. Jason, why are you with that woman? Well, she said she knew a guy nearby who had some brains for us, so I was just going to see if I could get some brains for us because you like brains, sweetheart, and I love you. A lot of love and brains because I'm your man and brains. Jason, why are you leaving that woman's bedroom? Yeah, yeah. You see, this crazy woman I do not know asked me to walk her dog, and I told her, fix it, I'm going to eat it. Then I ate her dog, and that's when you saw me leave. Plus, I was giving you brains, baby. We no longer even try to catch him in a lie because it's so impossible. Don't be Jason. Why did you bring up that jerk? It was kind of off topic, wasn't it? Anyway, before I was rudely cut off. Maggots. They can see what's behind your eyes. Most of the time, they'll just move your eye slightly so it looks in a different direction. It may look like a disability, but I've seen some great people get through it and still live their amazing lives. What you think about is important more often than what you see. The worst thing that could happen is that the maggots would pull your eyeball out of your head. This works two ways most of the time. The first thing that would happen is that your eyes would leave your body. For a moment, you'd see your face from a perspective you've never seen it from before, and then nothing. In the second form, your eye stays connected to the optic nerve and hangs from your skull. I've been told that this isn't completely bad and gives you a different view of things. Think of a GoPro camera. Another thing is that maggots will eat your penis. Some stories say that people are unhappy about this, but I say, c'est la vie, things come and go. Other than that, everything else is fruit, cream, and gray matter sundaes. Reader, I know that no life is perfect, But I think we both know that this is the right life for you. Now is the time for you to stand up and protest. For once, you'll be part of the in crowd. Morgue doesn't mean you can let down your guard and start dressing like that. Also, you can use that if you want to. I want it to become popular. Do you remember Vogue by Madonna? That's the way it should be. Don't get any thoughts, jerk, I already have the copy written. But feel free to use it again. Thank you, we're morguing. You look pretty badass, lady and sir. Just raise your hands and... Morgue. I know, right? I can tell you're sure about your choice to go zombie, so I have some good news for you. I know that you've been on the fence about what to do. Should I choose a small bite? Should I hang myself in the closet? If that's not clear, I'll explain. The zombie virus is already in your blood. Now all you have to do is die to turn into a zombie. So, that stupid narrative fluff is now a thing. Don't say that Hollywood's lack of creativity is to blame for the end of the world. By the way, you don't need to worry about the specifics of your move. I made it so that it wasn't painful and was hard to notice. A small amount of infected blood mixed with a chemical that is absorbed by the skin can be dropped on a small area and cause it to turn. A small spot, like the keyboard's down arrow. Just a little drop will keep someone busy long enough to read a short story.